The National Weather Service has told the capital city of Alaska that the lake sitting above it will be full this week. Suicide Basin, a bowl of meltwater held back by the ice of the Mendenhall Glacier, is forecast to fill between August 8th and August 12th. And once it is full, the water can break out from under the glacier at any point in roughly the following 6 days. About 1,900 homes will be advised to evacuate. Last August, the same basin let go and drove the Mendenhall River to 65 feet, the highest crest ever recorded there, beating the records set in 2023 and in 2024, 2 years in a row before that. This is a flood that arrives on a clear, dry day. From a lake, most of the people below it cannot even see. Why Juneau has spent nearly $20 million on a wall of steel and fabric baskets, and why the city then decided it could not afford the wall that would actually hold the worst case, is the real story here. But first, what is happening above the city right now? Suicide Basin is a side valley of the Mendenhall Glacier. As that glacier has thinned and pulled back over recent decades, it left behind a deep rock bowl beside its main body. And every summer that bowl fills with meltwater and rain. What holds the water in is not a dam of concrete or earth. It is the glacier itself. Ice acts as the wall. And ice is a wall with a flaw. Water under enough pressure will eventually find or melt a channel underneath it, and when it does, the entire basin drains beneath the glacier, into Mendenhall Lake, and straight down the Mendenhall River through the middle of Juneau's most populated valley. The basin exists at all because the glacier has been shrinking. A side valley that was once filled by ice is now an empty rock bowl with a glacier along one edge of it, and every year that bowl catches the melt. This is the part that makes the hazard permanent rather than freakish. The thinner the ice gets, the more of that bowl is exposed to fill, and the weaker the ice wall holding it becomes. Juneau is not dealing with a one-off accident of geography. It is dealing with a basin that the retreat of its own glacier keeps opening wider. That mechanism is why this flood behaves unlike almost any other in the United States. There is no storm to watch on radar. The sky above Juneau can be blue and the river can still rise past its banks, because the trigger is not weather at all. It is a hidden reservoir letting go inside a glacier. Residents in the Mendenhall Valley have learned to watch a basin level rather than a forecast rain total. It also explains why the warning comes in two separate parts, which is the detail most coverage blurs. The National Weather Service can see the basin filling through cameras, lake-level sensors, and satellite imagery, and can say with real confidence when it will be full. That is the August 8th to 12th window. What no one can forecast is the exact moment the ice gives way. A more recent NOAA update expected the basin to be full by Monday or Tuesday, with the release following up to 6 days later. So Juneau is not waiting for one date. It is waiting inside a window, knowing the release could come on any of those days at any hour. The reason that window has the city's full attention is what happened last year. On the morning of August 13th, 2025, the Mendenhall River crested at 65 feet at around 7:15. It was a record, higher than 2023, higher than 2024, both of which had themselves set records at the time. The city and borough of Juneau pushed an emergency alert to phones in the flood zone telling residents that evacuation was advised. Water moved through neighborhoods, streets went under, and a state situation report tracked the response as it unfolded. And the year before that, in 2024, the outburst had already damaged more than 100 homes. 3 consecutive summers, 3 record or near-record floods in the capital city of a U.S. state. These are not freak events anymore. Suicide Basin has been releasing floods every year since 2011. 15 years of this has changed what normal means in the Mendenhall Valley. This is not a remote outpost. It is a suburban valley of ordinary American streets, driveways, schools, and shopping in a state capital, and it happens to sit on the drainage path of a glacier. Summer there now comes with a routine almost no other U.S. community has, watching a basin level through the warm months, keeping sandbags and documents ready, knowing which neighbors are inside the advised evacuation zone and which are just outside it, and treating a bright August week as the dangerous part of the year rather than the pleasant one. Flood insurance, property values, and the simple question of whether to stay are live conversations on those streets, not abstractions. Which brings up the thing Juneau built. After the 2024 damage, the city installed a temporary levee running roughly 2.5 miles along the bank of the Mendenhall River. Not concrete, but roughly 10,000 HESCO barriers, the collapsible wire and fabric baskets filled with sand and gravel that armies use for blast walls and that flood engineers have adopted because they can be put up fast and moved later. The system was designed to protect more than 460 properties. It is worth being clear about what those barriers are, because flood wall suggests something more permanent than what is actually standing there. A HESCO barrier is a collapsible wire cage lined with heavy fabric. Empty, it folds flat and stacks on a truck. On site, a loader fills it with sand, gravel, or soil, and once filled, each unit becomes a solid block heavy enough to hold back moving water. Link enough of them, and a levee can be raised in days, rather than the years a concrete structure would take. That speed is the entire reason Juneau could respond at all between one summer's flood and the next, but the same qualities cut the other way. They are temporary by design, they have to be maintained, inspected, and rebuilt, and their height is fixed. Water that rises above the top does not stop, it simply goes over. A HESCO wall is a bet on a number. Everything depends on choosing the right one. In 2025, it was tested by the biggest flood on record, and according to the city, it worked. Officials said the barriers protected homes that would otherwise have been far more badly damaged, even though flooding still got through in places. A U.S. city stacked 10,000 baskets along a river against a glacier, and the river lost more ground than it should have. The bill, though, has moved in one direction. The semi-permanent levy was first projected at around $8 million. Phase 1 is now estimated at $19.8 million, close to 4 times the original figure. And a proposed Phase 2 carries a preliminary estimate that could exceed a further $17 million. For a city of roughly 30,000 people, those are enormous numbers. Then came the decision that sits at the center of this story, and it deserves to be stated plainly. Going into 2026, the plan had been to rebuild the flood wall to withstand an outburst roughly twice the size of the 2025 record. That is not what is being built. The wall is being rebuilt to handle a flood about 30% larger than last year's instead. The Juneau Assembly was told that both the risks and the costs are climbing, and it concluded that worst-case protection was too expensive to buy right now. The design target settled at flows of up to 90,000 cubic feet per second, roughly a 20-foot lake stage. That is a U.S. city with 3 record floods in 3 years, doing the arithmetic on the worst case and deciding it cannot afford it, not through negligence, through budget. And this week, the Basin is filling again. The money reached individual doorsteps too. Hundreds of Mendenhall Valley property owners had been facing assessments of up to $6,300 each to pay for the barriers protecting their neighborhood. In June 2026, the Assembly voted to cancel that plan and have the city cover it instead. 4 property owners are still being charged $50,000 apiece for riverbank armoring installed along their land. Behind every barrier statistic, there is an argument about who pays to be protected from a glacier. For 2026, the defenses have been reinforced rather than replaced. The barrier system built before the 2025 flood has been expanded, and the city has added 40 pumps along the river to move water that gets past or behind the wall. Pumps matter more than they sound. In a flood like this, water does not only come over a barrier, it seeps around and beneath it and pools on the dry side, and without pumping that trapped water, floods the same homes the wall was built to save. The monitoring itself has become a small, permanent operation. The National Weather Service runs a dedicated suicide basin program. Time-lapse cameras trained on the basin, sensors tracking the water level inside it, and satellite passes checking how far it has filled, and publishes the readings so residents can watch the same numbers the forecasters watch. That transparency is the reason a fill window can be announced weeks ahead and a whole valley can prepare in daylight rather than being woken by sirens. It is genuinely one of the better-run hazard monitoring efforts in the country, and it is also an admission of what cannot be fixed. All that observation buys warning time, not prevention. Meanwhile, the federal government has started looking past walls altogether. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has said it will soon unveil what one official described as an unprecedented approach to a long-term solution, and that once the 2026 outburst has passed, it intends to solicit bids from the private sector to ultimately evacuate the water from Suicide Basin itself. That is a fundamental change of strategy. Everything Juneau has done so far has been about surviving the flood. This would be about removing the lake before it can flood at all, draining or tapping a glacial basin on purpose, which is an engineering problem very few places on Earth have ever attempted at this scale. There is one more layer to this week specifically. August is the peak of Juneau's cruise season, when the city's population swells with visitors from ships tied up downtown, many of them heading out to see the Mendenhall Glacier, one of the most visited glaciers in the United States. The same ice that draws thousands of American tourists to the edge of a lake each summer is the wall currently holding back the flood that the valley behind it is preparing to evacuate for. So, the days ahead follow a script Juneau now knows well. The basin fills, the alerts go out, and about 1,100 homes are advised to leave. The barriers stand along 2.5 miles of riverbank, the 40 pumps wait, and the river gauge becomes the most watched number in Alaska. Then, at some hour nobody can name in advance, the water finds its way under the ice, and the Mendenhall River begins to climb. And there is a question underneath all of it that Juneau cannot answer from the riverbank. Nobody knows how big these outbursts can eventually get, because the basin's capacity depends on how the glacier keeps changing, and the glacier is still changing. A wall built for 30% above the 2025 record is a bet that the next few years stay inside that margin. The Assembly did not choose that number because it believed the worst case was impossible. It chose it because the worst case cost more than the city had. That gap between what is affordable and what is possible is the honest shape of this hazard. And it is a gap a lot of American communities are quietly living inside, not just this one. Whether it stops below 1665 feet or writes a fourth record in 4 years is the one thing no forecast can settle. Subscribe for the real numbers on the next one, verified and in full.